Hi, Dr. Mary.
Hello, Dee. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Not too bad at all, actually. Looking forward to tomorrow.
Yeah, I am too. It's time to come home. There are things I will really miss about this, but
Well, I'm glad you did it, and it was nice to see it when I came for our little one of our anniversaries.
mhm, yeah, it's lovely. So we're pre-recording this because Facebook Live isn't working. So sorry about that. All of our throngs of fans who depend on getting their day started with a daily dose. Dr. Mary, today we're talking about something that is funny for me to be talking about. Actually, all these money conversations are kind of funny for me to be talking about because they kind of make it sound like I really care about the management of money, which I don't, except sometimes I do. Um, but
Well, you
today's
do a
topic,
good job with us, lover.
thank you. Well, and what's most interesting is I also do a really good job at the Arts Partnership.
You
So
do.
I must have an inherent money thing. It's just it was dormant for a really long time.
That's because it was the lack of substance to do anything with, I think.
Maybe I'm one of those people who's good with some stuff. I'm not
Yeah.
so good with the lack of.
You,
Anyway,
you don't do theoretical stuff that well.
no. So I read an article yesterday about Warren Buffett and his $300,000 haircut. And I was just intrigued by that because I don't follow a lot about Warren Buffett, but I'm alive. So I know a general narrative about him. And the whole purpose of the article was that when Warren Buffett was 10 years old, he read an article talking about compounding. And what happens when you put $1,000 in over 10 years, it compounds at 6% interest, blah, blah. So I did not really focus on the percentages because that is where this all falls apart for me. But the point is that the way that Mr. Buffett, in some ways, started his massive wealth was that he would say to himself, once he understood this principle, so if I spend $50 on a haircut, that's $50 I can't invest. And if I invest that money today and it's in there for 40 years, the compounded grand total of that $50 is X number of dollars. And so that's where this $300,000 haircut comes in, is that he has consistently lived his life sort of thinking through not the immediate expense, but the long-term compounded value of that, of not expending that money. So we were talking last night about what to talk about today. And I said, what if we talked about your sobriety in a compounding way?
That's interesting.
Because here's what I believe is true. Our lives are not only better because you got sober, but because you got sober, all of our life could get better.
Yeah.
So tell me what you think about that, because I actually really love that idea of one change can domino affect so many other things.
It's true. I wouldn't say when I got sober. I still had some work to do when I got sober, but that obviously was the start. I got sober. First thing that happens is you actually, when your body chemistry has to settle down for a bit, but then you start thinking clearly. You've thought you've always be able to think clearly, but you haven't. But you actually start thinking clearly, and that's kind of scary. But then you make your first decision. And I think the first decision with me is, yeah, I'm sober. What I was doing to myself was dangerous. What do I do now? And for me, I had you on the sidelines and you were still on the sidelines. And I thought, and they tell, one of the first things they told us is don't hang on to an anchor. You got to do this for yourself. You can't do this for someone else. I was told I can't get sober for you. I had to get sober for me. Yes. And that was the first thing. So I'm sober. What do I do next? I stay sober for me. Mm-hmm. That's when I learned the phrase about you're in a plane, it's going down. If you want to help people, you got to put your own oxygen mask on first. So that was the next step. Looking after you, then you can think about how you can improve what can you do to make amends? I mean, it's, we talked about the promises. One of them is, make amends for your previous actions, but you have to get your current actions going off in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step was, do I want to stay sober? Yes. It's like a Venn diagram, really. What do I do? What on earth, how can I do that? Then it's, all right, what's next? Yes, no, do I still have a job? Yes, no, am I still going to be married? How can I make sure I stay married? How can I make sure I get relationships remade with, the family, like you and Queen? You and I were very lucky. I had immense support from our friends who didn't say, "Oh, Maz is an alcoholic." Some of them could have said, "Hey, what does that make me? I don't want to deal with it." But we had nothing but support from absolutely everyone we know.
Yeah.
That helped. But that's also the next step. The next compound is how to get back into life once you're getting your life back. And you can't wait too long. You got to say, all right, my life is still a farce. It's almost like a Shakespearean comedy, but I have to now deal with this, and then I've got to deal with this, but I've got to keep everything going. I've got to get my family back. I've got to get our family friends back, because if you can stay with your family but none of your friends have anything to do with you, then your family suffers more from your actions. So it's trying to get it then becomes more than one ball. It becomes 3 or 4, and you've got to get them up to the same speed.
Yeah. So I think what's really beautiful about this is it speaks to this idea that we've really been fixated on, which is just take the first step. Just the first step. You don't have to have your first full day of kind of rational sobriety when you're past the physical piece of it and you're finally in your right mind. You don't have to, on that day, solve the problems that you will encounter 5 years from now, or the challenges you have to make amends for from 5 years ago. You just have to decide, what's the first thing I need to do? And in your case, the first thing, and I think in everybody's case, addict or not, the first thing is I have to put my own oxygen mask on. Because if I'm gasping for air, how can I possibly be useful, valuable, beneficial to anybody else who's also gasping for air? And as soon as you are comfortably breathing, you can look around and you can help adjust the mask of somebody else. You can, whatever. We don't need to carry the oxygen mask analogy all the way down to the end. But I love this idea of what can you do to build on the step from the previous step, from the previous step, from the previous step, because you can't start at the top. You have to start at the bottom and work your way up. And the best way to do that is to compound your decisions. One good decision leads to another good decision, which leads to another good decision. And it ripples out. Suddenly, everything is working better, which I imagine then makes it easier to wake up the next day and stay sober. Is that true?
It is. Well, you think about what we did. So I got sober. I went back to work. First, I hadn't done this in years. I applied to go to a conference. Mm-hmm. You came with me. We went to the American Society of Plant Biology Conference 2017 in Honolulu.
Yeah, it was really rough. It was quite a sacrifice on my part.
First plane I'd ever been on sober. That was my next thing. Yep. And I was scared. It was fine.
Yep.
We met up with an old friend of mine who invited us to England. I got my sabbatical. My sabbatical came through. So a few months later, we got on another plane. And I thought, yeah, I've done that before. This one's going to be fine. And it was great. But the big thing there was, we're going to see my mother. And she dealt with me going through treatment from 6 time zones away. So that was a big thing for me. And that was fine.
Yep.
And then the next thing was, finally, you're married to an Irishman. We finally went to Ireland. And that was my next thing. I'm in Ireland. Ireland's culture is surrounded by a bar. What are we going to do? You're not going to see Ireland properly. It was fine. This Ireland have embraced non-alcoholic drinks.
Right.
And vegetarian edible food for the Americans.
Yes, yes.
And it was magical. And that was another compound thing. Like everything you wanted to do fell into place because I got sober.
Yes. Yes. And if you are watching this and addiction isn't your problem, you know, compounding comes from money. So of course that doesn't need us to explain it, but the same is true with rebuilding relationships, with parenting, with losing weight, with trying to change whatever it is in your life you need to change. How can you compound the successes so that they start to outweigh the deficits? And when you have more success than not, suddenly you become a person of success, and success begets success.
That's why.
Just like addiction begets addiction. I mean, you were compounding in the negative direction before you got sober. You didn't start drinking in the morning. You compounded to drinking in the morning.
Yeah. But
so
that's what
it can go
sobriety system. That's why we have the coins. You compound to the first month, then you keep going. You get your second month's chip and your third, and you go up to a year. Then they did a smart thing. You go, I've been sober a year. What do I do? And that's what most people fail. So, well, we'll celebrate 18 months because 2 years, that's a long time.
Feels like a long way. Yeah.
And then when I went from 2 years to 3 years, that was the longest one. I thought, hang on, there's no 2.5 years. What do I do? What do I do in August?
Yeah.
But I'm celebrating 2.5 years. But it's getting you to the next goal. And I got my 3-year chip, you know, and just in the nick of time, actually, it turns out, before COVID reared its ugly head. But keeping those things going, I mean, the reward of compounding an achievement, sobriety chips is a fantastic example.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I loved this idea of just where can you make the first successful investment in yourself? For heaven's sakes, we talk relentlessly, and by we, I mean culturally, talks relentlessly about the value of saving money. What is the compound value of saving your life?
Yeah.
There is no dollar amount. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Oprah Winfrey, those people are no richer than you and I are, because our lives are so joyful and fulfilling and blessed. That's a compounding that is, regardless your financial situation. So spend as much time compounding your own life as you do your IRA, your 401k, your retirement account. For heaven's sakes, you might not live to spend that, but you are living today.
Yeah.
Compound today, the successes of today. You got anything else to add, Dr. Mary?
No.
I love this idea. I love this idea so much. So thanks, Mr. Buffett. It's the first advice I've actually ever taken from you, because I'm not an investor. So I appreciate it. Dr. Mary.
Yes.
We only have one more of these from this socially distanced environment, and then I'll be home.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll be arguing about who sits on what side before you know it.
No, I get my good side, Dr. Mary. Come on. Come on. Now I have other things to worry about. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Dr. Mary, I'll talk to you later.
No, I love you. Talk to you later.
Love you too. Bye.